It started like any other storm warning. The weather alerts lit up our phones and the city sirens wailed across the town, signaling the approach of a severe tornado. Living in the Midwest, this was nothing new, just another Tuesday. My roommate Jenny and I grabbed our emergency kit and headed to the basement, settling in for what we assumed would be a couple of hours of waiting. The storm outside sounded vicious, winds howling, thunder cracking like it was splitting the sky in half. But the strange thing was, the sirens didn't stop. Usually they'd wail for a few minutes and then silence, but tonight, they kept going, droning on and on. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the text I was sending my mom to let her know that we were safe. But Jenny kept pacing. "Something feels off," she said, pressing her ear to the basement door. She was right. The siren sounded wrong. The tone was slightly higher than normal, almost like they were struggling to keep the same pitch. And underneath the mechanical sound was something else, a low guttural noise barely audible, but unmistakably there. A rumble rolled through the ground beneath us, shaking the basement walls. That's when we heard the first scream. It came from outside, muffled but blood-curdling. Jenny froze, and my phone slipped from my hand. We stared at each other in silence, straining to hear more. Another scream followed, then another, until they balanced into a chaotic chorus of panic. I crept up from the stairs to the small window near the front of the house. Rain streaked on the glass, but through the flashes of lightning, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The sky wasn't green like you'd expect before a tornado. It was red, deep swirling red, as though the clouds themselves were bleeding. "Do you see anything?" Jenny whispered behind me, her voice trembling. I was about to answer when the power cut out, plunging us into darkness. Then came the knocking. It wasn't at the door. It was on the basement walls. 3 sharp knocks, spaced evenly apart, like someone or something was outside, trying to get in. Jenny clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "There is no way anyone's out there in this storm," she said, her voice barely audible. The knocks came again, louder this time and closer. They didn't move like a person would. It was as if whatever was knocking was circling the basement, faster than it should have been possible. And then it spoke. At first it was a garbled mess, like static on a radio. But then the words became clear, even though the voice was all wrong, too deep, too distorted to be human.
"Let us in."
I stumbled back, dragging Jenny with me. We huddled in the corner. The voice came again, this time from directly above us, as though if inside the house.
"Let us in."
The siren outside shifted, their pitch rising until they sounded like screams themselves. The guttural noise underneath grew louder, more defined. It wasn't just a rumble. It was breathing. The storm never passed. Morning never came. The last thing that I remember was the basement door creaking open, a cold draft rushing in, and Jenny screaming as a figure stepped inside. I don't know how to describe it, except to say that it wasn't human. Now, I'm alone. Jenny's gone. I don't know where she is or if she's even alive. But there's something worse. I just heard my phone buzz. A weather alert. The sirens are starting again. And this time, I think they're for me. When I was 12 years old, I had a friend whose fascination with the devil became a consuming obsession. She frequently claimed that she had sold her soul to him, and while her declarations unsettled me, they also intrigued me. It felt like she wielded a power over her own narrative, akin to a character from a story I had yet to even fully decipher. One day she brought a Ouija board to school, convinced that it would be our gateway to the supernatural realm. Her excitement was infectious, and I found myself swept up in the idea of connecting with something beyond our ordinary lives. We decided to sneak into a dimly lit bathroom during lunch, our hearts racing with the thrill of secrecy. The peeling paint on the walls and the flickering overhead lights created an atmosphere ripe for a supernatural encounter. Once inside, we turned off all the lights, enveloping ourselves in a thick blanket of darkness, armed with only the faintest glow from the stray lights peeking through the cracks. We placed our fingers lightly on the planchette, its wood cold beneath our touch. At first, as we attempted to summon spirits, nothing significant happened. My skepticism began to rise. I couldn't shake that feeling that my friend was somehow manipulating the planchette, moving it ever so slightly under the guise of a spirit's influence. However, the air around us felt charged, electric with anticipation, like static before the storm. As we continued, I stole a glance into the shadows, and my heart almost stopped. There, amidst the thick veil of darkness, I saw a pair of piercing green eyes. They glowed with an unsettling luminescence unlike anything I had encountered before. They seemed to absorb the surrounding light and radiate an almost eerie allure. Fear gripped my chest as I realized we had perhaps unknowingly crossed a threshold into something far darker than our innocent game had intended. These eyes weren't a fiery red of a demon from horror stories. Instead, they emanated a chilling, otherworldly presence, sending shivers down my spine. Instinctively, I knew we needed to escape this bathroom. As I emerged from a suffocating darkness, I reached out and grasped her hand, feeling the cool tile beneath our feet, contrasting sharply with the warmth of our intertwined fingers. However, as we rounded the corner, she suddenly paused, her brow furrowing and a look of bewilderment crossing her face. "Why are we in such a hurry?" she asked, confusion clouding her features. Time seemed to stretch in that moment, my heart hammering in my chest as I hesitated, grappling with what I had just witnessed. "What about the eyes? Did you not see them?" I blurted out in desperation. Her reaction was surprising. She stared at me as though I had lost my grip on reality. "What eyes?" she replied, shaking her head with incredulity. She didn't see anything amiss. To her, it appeared I was being simply obnoxious. I felt a wave of disorientation wash over me. It was as though I had conjured a hallucination while she remained blissfully ignorant of the truth lurking in the darkness. After that disconcerting encounter, it felt as if she had vanished from existence altogether. There were no traces of her at school, no fleeting glimpses in the hallways or murmurs of her name. My mind raced with unanswered questions and a growing sense of urgency as I inquired with teachers and classmates, seeking even a hint, a glimmer of recognition. Their responses, however, were the same: blank stares and laughter, dismissive incredulity. "I don't know who you're talking about," they would say, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated and bewildered. In the following nights, a gnawing sense of unease enveloped me like a heavy cloak. It felt as if reality itself was subtly shifting, leaving me trapped in a world that grew increasingly distorted with every passing day. Small anomalies became my consistent companions. The paint of my bedroom walls seemed to shift hues mysteriously. A beloved book would inexplicably vanish from my shelf, or I could catch a fleeting reflection in the mirror that didn't quite align with my own features. My most jarring experience, though, was the disorientation that came with time. Days blended together, feeling strangely out of order, and I would sometimes awaken with the unsettling certainty that years had slipped by while the calendar insistently declared otherwise. With each new day, an undercurrent of dread coiled tightly around my chest, whispering that something profoundly wrong lay beneath the surface of my life, a sinister reality unraveling around me, and I was the only one aware of this disruption of the fabric of existence. Weeks later, I received a notification from an unfamiliar user on social media. The name sparked faint recognition, and as we began chatting, a chilling truth emerged. She had tricked me. The friend I once knew was not who she seemed. She was a demon. By touching the Ouija board that day, I had unwittingly cursed myself, sealing my fate. She explained that each night my essence would drift through shifting realities, each one leading me closer to this grotesque realm of hell. Overwhelmed by this sheer weight of this revelation, I withdrew from the world. I barricaded myself in a room for a week, emerging only for food or to use the bathroom, too terrified to engage anyone. The faces around me, my family, my friends, seemed like hollow shells, mere puppets created by some malignant force intent on driving me mad. I had not lost my sanity. Rather, I had come to accept the crushing reality of my existence. It dawned on me that one day I would inevitably descend into hell, and there was nothing I could do to avert that terrifying fate. My heart sank as I woke up to the sun streaming in. A warm, sunny Saturday that would mean only one thing. We would have to get our asses in gear and head outdoors to a lake or a park or something. God forbid we'd spent a Saturday resting at home after a hard week of work. Sun guilt, my wife calls it laughingly. Apparently we'll feel bad if we don't go outside and enjoy sunlight and nature. No, I won't. Oh, stop grumbling, she says. And it's too late. We're there already, at a local lake. Trudging through the narrow woodsy trail to get to the lakeside, I look at my wife's bare legs and arms in her flimsy shorts and tank top, brushing against the branches and the leaves. She's not a local. Honey, watch out for ticks and bugs, will ya? I call. Oh shoot, I forgot the mosquito repellent, she answered, but doesn't seem to mind it, and soon enough we emerge from the woods onto this narrow stony beach by the lake. We plod down on our towels, a bit winded and sweaty from the short hike, mosquitoes finding us enticing. My wife gives little screams, slapping them away. We decided to get into the water to escape them. We wade out together, but then my wife declares that the lake is creepy. She is right, it is. The water has this reddish black tinge to it due to its minerals. It's a bit windy too. My wife returns to the beach, but I'm in no hurry to join the mosquitoes and the ticks and wade in further, deep enough to dip my head in and swim a bit. I can still hear my wife's little screams in the distance, carrying over the water. I splash around some more, beginning to relax and enjoy the feel of the cold, red-blackish water against my skin. My wife's screams are becoming louder. I guess she was calling to me to go back as I was drifting further from the shore. I want to ignore the screams, but they have reached a hysterical pitch I have never heard before. Reluctantly, I anchor my feet in this mushy, rocky, weird lake floor with water streaming from my eyes, looking back at the shore. In time to see giant creatures that look like overgrown ticks and mosquitoes. Huge creatures of monstrous proportions impaling my wife on their enormous sharp protrusions. Before my horror struck my eyes, they ripped her apart and proceeded to calmly eat bleeding, pieces of her. Some of the pieces still squiggling. Their fearsome mouths chew in what seems like a slow motion. The sound of screaming has long died down. After my first initial paralysis of shock and fright pass, I duck under the water and swim over to the next little beach, about 100 meters over. As I had hoped, that beach was clear of infestation, the main attraction being obviously elsewhere. I wade towards the land, ignoring the things brushing against my legs, and once there, sprint up to the trail as fast as I could towards the parking lot. Branches and leaves and other things I dare not look at catch at me, brushing against my wet skin as I run. But nothing stops me, and soon I am by the highway, sobbing, wet, and begging for help, but safe from giant mosquitoes and ticks on the beach by the lake. The police were able to find some bits and pieces of her scattered on the beach, but no signs of vicious bugs which I described attacking her. They concluded that I was suffering from some sort of traumatic hallucination and that she had been attacked by a random wild bear or other wildlife, even though no such creature has been spotted in our area. I know what I saw, but I had the sense to stop talking about it after I realized they were not taking me seriously. I have never been out in the nature since. I should have turned back an hour ago. The road's gone now, just whispers under the snow. My wipers gave up 10 minutes back, frozen stiff and smearing white instead of clearing it. Headlights press against the flurry like fists in cotton, doing nothing. I'm not even sure what lane I'm on. Somewhere between Abergavenny and Brecon, on one of those little B roads that snakes between empty farmland and the forest. It's been snowing since late afternoon. At first it was soft flakes that just vanished when they hit the windshield. Now it's thick, wind-driven snow that just sticks. It just sinks. That swallows. I pulled over because I can't see anymore, because the steering wheel's vibrating from the ice, because if I go even 10 feet farther, I might not come back. I killed the engine. The world doesn't go quiet. It goes muffled. It's only when the heater dies that I realize how deep the cold really is. The silence inside the car is just weird, artificial, the kind that just makes you hyper-aware of yourself. The way that your jeans crinkle when you shift, the tick of the dashboard settling, your own breath fogging the air. I check my phone. 7% battery. No signal. Figures. I'm not scared yet, just annoyed. I pull the blanket from the back seat, wrap it over my legs, crack open my thermos. Lukewarm coffee. It tastes like burnt pennies. Somewhere in the trees to my left, a branch snaps. I freeze. Just wind, and it has to be. I tell myself that a few times. Then I hear something else. A low dragging noise. Soft but deliberate. Snow being disturbed. I sit up, peer through my fogged windshield. Nothing but white. 10 minutes pass, maybe 20. I try to ration the heat in my body. Gloves stay on. I pull my arms inside of my coat and cross them over my chest. The cold isn't sharp. It's creeping. A living thing finding seams, working its way through the joints, ears, and ankles. I distract myself. Think about dinner plans, the job I need to call back about. Then I hear it again. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Too slow for a deer. Too heavy for a fox. It's pacing. Circling. My hand slides towards the driver's side window. Wipes the condensation. There. A shape. Tall. Not moving. Just a silhouette behind the snow. I blink and it's gone. Right, I mummer. Right, okay. I start the car. The engine stutters, groans, dies. I try again. Nothing but a click. The battery's frozen or flooded. I swear softly, fogging the inside of the windshield even more. Behind me in the mirrors, nothing. I shift in my seat, try the heater again. Nothing. Now the silence is watching. Half an hour later, my toes are numb. The shape hasn't come back, but something taps my rear window once. Soft, like a knuckle testing glass. I turn around fast enough to make my neck cramp. But there was nothing. But now, I'm sweating under the blanket. Something's out there, and it's not going away. I think about getting out, digging out, walking. But where? Even if I knew which direction the road went, I couldn't see 5 feet. And if something is circling me, walking into the white would be like me just handing it a knife. No, I'll stay. I breathe through my nose, trying not to fog up the window too much. There's a knock. Driver's side. 3 taps. Rhythmic. Like a question. I flinch so hard that the thermos spills on my legs. I turn slowly, heart beating in my throat. There's a shape against the glass, but it's not a hand. It's longer, jointed the wrong way, like an elbow that forgot how to be an elbow. It drags downward, squealing faintly against the frozen window. I don't breathe. It vanishes. Then, from my passenger side, laughter. Not loud, not riot, like someone trying to remember what laughter is supposed to sound like. Too wet, too slow. I whisper, no. The door handle clicks. Once, twice. Testing. I lean across and lock it manually. My fingers burn from the metal. Then I hunch down, behind the steering wheel, eyes barely over the dash, breathing shallow. Then I see it. Not the whole thing, just its feet, hooved, but wrong. Bent too far back, like something stitched together from memory. It's standing directly in front of my car, facing me. I close my eyes. I count. I listen. When I open them again, it's gone. The snow presses harder against my car now. The air, like needles. I wrap my blanket tighter, curl into myself, tuck my hands under my thighs, fingers tingling, teeth chattering. I think of a fire, a pub, the smell of frying onions. Then I hear my mother's voice outside, calling my name. Sweetheart. Soft and sweet, but definitely wrong. She's been dead for 3 years. I just sit there and shake. Not from the cold this time, from the sound of her feet crunching toward the window. My mother's voice again. Sweetheart, open the door. She sounds like she used to. When I was a boy and stayed too long outside, warm, patent. But I'm 36, and she's buried in Bexhill. The snow hushes everything but her voice. It weaves in through the glass and stitches itself around my ribs. Sweetheart, please. It's cold. I clamp my hands over my ears. I whisper to myself. I repeat the facts. This is not real. I'm in the car. I'm suffering mild hypothermia. Auditory hallucinations are common. Then, tap, tap on my passenger side glass. I dare look. There's something there. Not her. Tall, covered in matted wet fur that sticks to a torso too long, arms that hang low. Its head tilts like a crow listening for something in the soil. I see only the jaw, too wide, loose skin, dragging around over the bone, and then it smiles, or tries to. The cheeks pull upward, splitting at the corners like paper. Behind the skin, teeth, not rows, layers. I scream without sound. My breath fogs the glass. The thing leans in and whispers in a voice not made for breath.
Let me in, sweetheart.
I wake up with a jolt. Daylight. Pale, sickly, stretched thin over the horizon. The snowstorm had slowed. Everything's soft still. The car windows are glazed with frost, but nothing's outside. No tracks, no marks, no sign of anything. My joints scream. My mouth tastes like blood. I must have bit my tongue in my sleep. Sleep. God, I slept. With that out there, I unlocked the door slowly, stepped out into the cold. The snow is almost waist deep, but soft now. Powder. I wade around the car. Nothing. But then a single hoof print behind the vehicle. Pressed deep, almost burned in, like the snow melted around it before refreezing. I stare at it for a long time, and I don't breathe. I make it to the nearest town, just past midday. I walk 2.5 miles, I think. I don't remember most of it, just flashes. Tree trunks like columns, lights spinning through branches. A man at a petrol station just stares as I stumble inside. He gives me tea, calls someone. When the police come, I tell them I got stuck, slept in the car. Frostbite is on my fingertips. I don't mention the voice, or the smile, or the way it knew my name. They found the car later. They tell me there were scratch marks on all 4 doors. They tell me that the roof had been dented inward, like something heavy had lain on it all night. They show me a photo of the trail leading away from my car. A single line of footprints, then nothing, as if it just disappeared. It's been a week since this happened. I haven't left my flat. I keep the curtains shut, the kettle full, the heating on. Sometimes at night, I think I hear the wind again. Sometimes, I swear I see the frost on the inside of the window. And once, just once, I thought I heard her voice again, calling my name. But the thing that terrifies me the most, I want to answer it. I want to open the door, because I know, whatever it is, it's not done with me. I never should have opened that email. It came late one night, buried in a sea of spam clogging my inbox. The subject line was, "Play the game, win the prize." I don't know what possessed me to click on it, but maybe I was just bored, or maybe the insomnia had scrambled my brain. Either way, I clicked. The email had no text, just a link. Against every single ounce of common sense, I hovered over it, hesitating only a second before clicking. My browser opened to a black screen with a single line of text. "Welcome to the game. Will you play? Yes or no?" I stared at it, fingers hovering over my keyboard. It had to be a prank or something, or some kind of viral marketing stunt. I typed, "Yes," and hit enter. The screen flickered and new text appeared. The rules are simple. Do what we ask. No questions. No quitting. Win and you'll receive a reward beyond your wildest dreams. Lose and, well, you won't. A countdown started in the corner of the screen. 30 seconds. Underneath, a new message appeared. Level 1. Knock on your neighbor's door. I laughed at this. Was this it? A weird scavenger hunt? My neighbor, Miss Klein, was a sweet old lady who baked cookies for the whole block. I figured I'd humor the game and give her a laugh. I grabbed my phone and walked next door. The house was dark, but I knocked lightly anyway. No answer. I tried again, harder this time. Still nothing. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. We didn't say lightly knock. Knock harder. I froze, staring at the screen. How did they know? Heart pounding, I raised my fist and pounded on that door. This time, the lights flickered on, and Miss Klein opened the door, looking confused and unharmed. I mumbled an apology about a prank and rushed back to my house. My computer dinged. Well done, level 2. Leave your front door unlocked for the next hour. This time I hesitated. My neighborhood wasn't exactly crime-ridden, but leaving my front door open at night? No way. I hovered over the browser's close button, but the screen glitched and froze. My phone buzzed again. No quitting. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. Then I sat on the couch, staring at it, for what felt like forever. Nothing happened. No shadows moved across the porch. No footsteps crept up the stairs. Just silence. When the hour was up, my computer dinged again. Good. Level 3. Look under your bed. A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't looked under my bed in years, not since I was a child, and convinced myself that monsters lived under there. It was ridiculous, I told myself. Still, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling creeping up my neck. I grabbed a flashlight and knelt on the floor, shining it into the darkness under my bed. At first, I saw nothing but a few stray socks and some dust. Then, something moved. It was quick, just a flash of pale skin and fingers too long to be human. I jerked back, heart pounding, but when I looked again, it was gone. My computer dinged. Did you see it? Level 4. Invited out. I slammed my laptop shut, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Whatever this game was, it wasn't a joke, but it wasn't over. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a video. The shaky footage showed my bedroom. My bedroom, filmed from the corner near the ceiling. The camera zoomed in on my bed, and slowly, something crawled out from underneath it. The thing was impossibly thin, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. Its face was blank, pale expression with no eyes or any mouth, nothing but smooth, featureless skin. It tilted its head towards the camera, as if it knew that I was watching. The video ended. A new message appeared on my phone. Level 5. It's inside now. Hide. The sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys and bolted to the front door, sprinting down the street as fast as I could. Behind me, I swear I heard the sound of laughter, and low gutturals, and wrong. I spent the night in my car, parked in a well-lit gas station. When I finally returned home the next morning, the house was empty. My computer was gone, my phone too. It was like the game never existed. But I know it did, because sometimes, late at night, I hear those footsteps again, and I wonder if I ever really stopped playing. I had finally got the thing for me and my girlfriend that we both desired the most. I knew Emma would have the biggest smile on her face when I showed her I had finally snagged some tickets for Superstar Splash. Superstar Splash is a local water park in our area. Me and my girlfriend Emma have dreamed about going there all summer, but we have never been able to snag any type of tickets for it because they have either been too expensive or they were always sold out. I left the convenience store grateful. grateful that me and Emma had finally been able to go to our dream destination at a very cheap price. I got in my car and drove home, settling on the decision not to call Emma, so showing her the tickets would actually be more of a surprise. Once I got home, I left the tickets inside of my car as I brought the rest of the items we had needed inside. We only needed a few things, so that's why I drove to the convenience store right down the road instead of going to our local Walmart about 15 minutes away. After me and Emma had put the groceries inside, I told her that I had to get one more bag out of the car. I got the tickets and walked inside. Where's the bag, Steven? I didn't say anything. I just pulled the tickets out of my back pocket as Emma's eyes widened with joy, almost as if she was a child finally getting a puppy on Christmas Day. Oh my God, thank you, Steven. Me and Emma both went in for a hug, and we did have a little bit of a kiss too. We decided that we would leave on Friday, so that would give us 2 days to pack up. Also, that would work out for our jobs because conveniently, we're both off on the weekends. I was glad about this, so me and Emma didn't have to spare any days of work and get in trouble with our different bosses because we worked different jobs. After we had both calmed down a little bit after some TV, we decided to start packing. We packed up basic things, clothes, toothbrushes, chargers for our phones, and of course swimming trunks and towels and sunglasses, and after that, a few more necessities for us. Me and Emma both went to bed happy that night, happy that we were finally able to achieve our dream. Once I woke up early in the morning, I got ready for work. I made breakfast, got dressed, and brushed my teeth, trying to be as quiet as possible not to wake Emma up, who goes to work about an hour after me. I put on my construction boots and my vest, getting ready to continue work on the new apartment building in our city after the previous one was burned down due to arson. Maybe a man who got evicted and was pissed off. That's only a rumor that I've heard from my coworkers though, so I wouldn't want to believe that 100%. Once I got to work, I barely had any time to socialize with my colleagues because the day was just so busy. We mostly placed bricks on the frames and made sure that they were right because we didn't want this building to crumble to the ground as well. I finally got to chat with a good friend of mine, Terrence, at lunch break. I've been friends with Terrence since middle school. Terrence has always been obsessed with creepy shit since I met him. Every day he would tell me some creepy, scary tale which is likely false. He always acted like he believed in them, but I actually don't know if he actually did or actually thought that they were real. Probably not. I guess he was trying to scare me, but he always failed. When I finally met up with him on lunch, he of course told me another tale. This time he told me about some Chuck E. Cheese robot spitting some black fluid into a kid's mouth. It honestly sounded pretty stupid, and I told him in a joking manner, "Hey man, that sounds so fake. Don't tell me you came up with that. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you did." Terrence replied back with, "No, of course not. I didn't write it. I found it on a forum deep into the internet." I said, "Wow, I'm surprised." Terrence replied with, "Shut up, man. You believe my story in middle school, you know." I replied back with, "Yeah, whatever. Hey, let's just enjoy lunch. Also, I got me and Emma some tickets to Splash." Terrence had been there before, so he gave me that what to do and what not to do. Basically a guide of the place. "Hey man, you need to go to Super Splash Slide." I said, "Okay, me and Emma will try that." We continued to eat our lunch and then we got back to work. The rest of work went as well as you would expect. Then I drove home to Emma, who was awaiting my arrival. "Steven, you're home. Guess what?" "What is it, babe?" I replied back. "I packed all of your clothes and all of your things that you would need. And I also made dinner." "Wow, thanks, Emma. Now let's go eat." We ate dinner, which was a nice juicy steak. Emma and I even shared a toast. We watched a movie later that night and then we drifted off to sleep. When we both woke up, we had the rush because we needed to be at Superstar Splash by 1 p.m. The drive was about 3 hours and we needed about an hour to get dressed, load everything into the car, and get out of the door, so we would probably have to get up around 9 a.m. Once we got up at 9, we practically stuffed everything into that car while simultaneously brushing our teeth and getting dressed. Once we did a sweep that we had everything for probably the third time, we set off for the water park. Me and Emma just listened to the radio and talked about random things that we were having on our mind at the time. Emma even got the luxury to sleep in the car while I was stuck in the driver's seat sipping my warm coffee from the random gas station along the way. Once we finally pulled up, I couldn't help but just stare at the bask of the array of colors and the tubes that were the water slides. I woke him up and we headed to the front gates. I tell you, the line was long. I'd say we probably waited about 45 minutes, and by the time me and Emma got to the front gates, I glanced behind me and saw that the line was even longer than it was when me and Emma entered the line. I got our tickets verified and our wristbands, so we were now allowed to go into the park. So, we did. We got a key to our locker and went into the bathrooms. We got our swimming trunks on out of the duffel bag and we exited the bathroom. I put the bag into the locker and me and Emma ran around the water park, hitting up ride to ride like a child on Christmas running to the Christmas tree. And then I remembered about the Super Splash slide. I told Emma about it, but she wanted to go to the Lazy River. The Lazy River was right next to the Super Splash slide, so I didn't see any harm into going into the Lazy River first. During the ride, as we just relaxed, I couldn't help but notice how crowded the Lazy River was and the amount of people gliding along me and Emma. Once we got to this one section inside of the indoor tunnel, there were tiki statues everywhere. At least that's what I thought it was. I decided to lean over and kiss Emma, but when I did lean over, Emma lost her balance and fell out of the raft. I instinctively jumped out of the raft to find her and get her back up onto the surface. I opened my eyes underwater, trying to locate Emma, but I kept bumping my head on some other rafts and other people in the Lazy River. I eventually located Emma, who looked like she was unconscious. I saw she was holding her head and I assumed that she was hurt. She was moving so I could tell that she was not unconscious. But then I saw something that changed my life forever. I saw a hand open the cap of a drain and moved over Emma. The hand looked black, almost like as if it was rotted for a very long time. I saw another hand come out of the drain, and another, and another. They all grabbed a hold of Emma and dragged her into the drain. "Oh God, help me! Stephen, help! Somebody!" I swam over to her, but then I stopped when I saw the drain abnormally stretch as more and more of those hands rose as Emma was dragged into the drain. I swam over to her again, but it was too late. The drain had stretched back into its normal size, and one last hand popped the lid back on as I heard Emma's screams get quieter and quieter. It was almost as if nothing had ever happened at all. My first instinct was to go get help. There was no way in hell I would be going inside the drain alone. I popped up out of the water, gasping for air. I swam over to a man and said, "Help! Please! My girlfriend needs help, please!" The man was a large man, very overweight. He just said, "Hey kid, I don't have time for this." I was in a state where I was half panicked and half angry. I told him, "You aren't gonna help me, fat fuck?" I think he heard me, but he was probably too lazy to even get off of his tube. I just got to the edge of the Lazy River and ran off. I ran straight to the security office and busted through the door. "Please, I need help. My girlfriend needs help. Can you help me? Something dragged her into the fucking drain in Lazy River." The officer said, "Okay, I'll come help." He sounded confused, but he was willing to help. The Lazy River was closed down and everyone was cleared out. After the cops came and checked, they confirmed that everything was okay and that there was no evidence that anything came from the drain. and took my girlfriend in. One of the officers asked me, "Have you been drinking, son?" No, sir." "All right, kid. It's best you get some rest." After that, I just left the water park and went to a hotel that me and Emma had booked. I just got to the room and sat on the bed, wondering if what I saw was actually a dream or a vision, or if my existence was real at all. I left the hotel room the next day with all of mine and Emma's belongings. I didn't call Emma's parents because I didn't see the point in that. I really was just bent on if I was even real. Once I got home, I just unpacked everything, and I acted like everything was normal, like it used to be. I didn't show up to work at all that week. I just stayed home, eating, drinking, and sleeping. I got constant calls on my phone, which I assumed were my colleagues. I didn't answer any of the calls because I just felt like they would eventually forget about me and I could just fade away, just like Emma did. A week after the week I didn't go to work, I checked my mailbox to see that I had gotten a termination notice from my job. I didn't even care at this point. I remember one night that I decided to surf the web. I looked up the history of Superstar Splash. Nothing. I looked up something about the lazy river and Superstar Splash. Nothing once again. Now I looked up something about the drain inside the lazy river of Superstar Splash. Nothing. Yet again. I scrolled through the endless pages to see if anyone had any type of experience even remotely similar to mine. Nothing. Mostly the results were just people complimenting the water park and saying how they loved going there and that they were definitely going to go again. I decided that I would have to get my answers myself. The next day, I got dressed in swimming trunks and drove off to Superstar Splash. I didn't stop all the way there. Not for gas or coffee. I was awake because I was finally going to see Emma again after almost 3 weeks. The car slowed down as I stopped in the parking lot. As I got out of the car and headed towards Superstar Splash, I walked up to the gate and I waited in line for what I presume was about 2 hours. I don't actually know if that's true because after Emma was taken, I completely lost track of time. Once I actually got to the front, I bought a ticket on the spot and was given my wristband. I went straight to the lazy river and got in the raft. Once we reached the tiki tunnel, I jumped out and swam to the drain. I just sat there bobbing up and down until I heard Emma's voice. "Hello? Steven?" I said back, "Hey babe, I'm back." Then a black hand popped out at the top of the drain and was going to grab me. I was about to grab it when I hesitated. I decided that, I can't believe it, but after these 3 weeks, I wanted to actually live, move on with my life. But then I thought that me and Emma never got to go to Superstar Splash Slide, as I promised. But before I could say anything, more hands popped out of the drain and grabbed me. I was pulled down as the drain stretched, and more hands grabbed me. Once I hit the floor, I was unconscious. Once I awoke, I looked around to see corpses all around me. They were corpses, but they were living. One of them walked up to me, picked me up, and called out, "We got a new guy here." Someone came out of the dark shadows. It was Emma. She was starting to rot and smell foul, but that was her, all right. She grabbed my hand, and we walked into the darkness. These past few weeks here, I have learned a lot. There are a lot of people around, young and old. Some people here were new here, and they just started to decompose. Other people have long decomposed, but forced to still be alive. At first, I thought this place had brought me peace, but now I have started decomposing myself. I can't take it here. I can't starve. I can't dehydrate. I can't get out. I can't die, but I still feel every single bit of pain. And let me tell you, having your own fucking body rot right before your eyes while you feel every bit of the pain is not pleasant, to say the least. And if this is not hell, then I'll be damned. I don't know how long I have. My battery's at 14% and I don't dare start that van. If I do, they'll hear me. I know that sounds paranoid, but you didn't see them. Or maybe you have. If you have, tell me. I need to know how to get out of here. Okay? I travel alone. I document it. My channel isn't big yet, maybe 12,000 subscribers, but I post regularly. Off-grid campsites, van conversations, solo travel trips, and that kind of thing. I stay out of cities, and I stay off of well-worn paths. The further I am from people, the safer I feel. Or I guess I should be saying the safer I used to feel. Tonight I'm parked off the forest road in Idaho, miles from the nearest town. It's the kind of place where if you screamed, no one would hear you. That's one of my go-to videos, by the way. A big scream, loud as I can, and then just the silence afterward. Basically, the place was perfect. Until the knock came. A single, soft knock. Not on the door. On the window. I froze. It was just after 1 a.m. The woods were silent. No wind and no animal noises. My van is unmarked. I never advertise I'm a woman traveling alone, and I always wait and post my videos a week after, just to make sure that no one catches on to where I'm parked. So, how did someone find me, let alone creep up without setting off any of my motion lights? Another knock. Light. Insistent. There was no way this could be anything good, right? My heart was racing, my stomach already twisted into knots, muscles pulled tight. I reached for my phone. My stupid fingers fumbled and it hit the floor mat. The thump seemed to thunder loud, and when I sat back up, I nearly screamed. A child's face was pressed against the window. Pale skin, dark hair, wide, staring eyes. But something was wrong. The glass reflected weird, but there was no shine in the kid's pupils. Just black. Completely black. I choked on my breath. Every instinct in me just screamed wrong, wrong, wrong. Why was this child out here? I was so far away from any of the main roads. It wasn't the kind of place children would be. The kid didn't move, didn't blink. Then, another knock. My head snapped towards the sound, and my stomach dropped. There was a second one. A little girl this time, standing by my back door. Same dark hair. Same vacant, black stare. I don't scare easy. I've slept in parking lots where guys tried to break into my van. I've camped in places where the only sounds were coyotes circling. I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but I'm also not just starting out. But this was something else. I kept my hand low, fumbling for my knife while trying to keep my breathing steady. That sounds bad. These were just kids, right? But you don't understand. There was something wrong with them. The boy at the window finally spoke. "Let us in." 3 words. No emotion. No inflection. Just a flat, empty demand. I shook my head. It made all my hair stand up on end. He spoke again, more persistent this time. "Let us in." The girl knocked again harder. I heard it rattle the doors. It was a childish response, but I grabbed my blanket and pulled it over my shoulders, cowering beneath the heavy cotton like it was a shield. I clutched my knife so tightly, it made my knuckles ache. I don't know how long I sat there, too afraid to breathe. I knew that if I opened the door, I wouldn't be able to close it again. Suddenly, they stepped back. The dark of the night engulfed the windows again. I barely had time to process that relief before a new sound nearly made me scream. A tap on the driver's side. I whipped around. There was a third child. A new one. This kid was a little taller. He was maybe 12 at the oldest, standing inches from my driver's side door. Unlike the other two, he was grinning. The handle jerked, but I kept my door closed so it didn't open. The grin widened.
Let us in.
The same 3 words. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. I don't remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly they were in my hand. I flipped the ignition and the dashboard lit up. My heart slammed. If I had to, I'd run them over. But the engine didn't start. I turned the key again. Nothing. Nothing. The battery was fine. The gas was full. It had everything to start just fine this afternoon. But right now, the van wasn't starting. And the kids, they were still standing there, staring, smiling. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking. No service. Then the tapping started again. Every window, every door, a slow, measured rhythm. I must have blacked out at some point, because the next thing I knew, the van was filled with light. Sunlight. I woke up still clutching my knife. My doors were locked. My keys were still in the ignition. My phone was in my lap, battery at 23%. I risked a glance outside, but there were no signs of kids. I opened my driver's side door, hard hammering. The air smelled like the damp earth. Pine. A beautiful, misty morning. My tires were untouched. There were no footprints in the loamy soil. It was like they'd never been there at all. But they were. I know they were. And I know they're still out there too, because my van still won't start. And I'm worried that tonight, the knock will come again. My wife and I had been dreaming of a quaint, secluded home for years. When we found the old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, it felt like fate. The price was unbelievably low, and the house, despite its age, was in good condition. We had moved in during the late autumn, the trees bare and the sky perpetual gray. From the very first night, the house felt off. There was an unsettling stillness, as if the very air held its breath, but we chalked it up to be the nerves and exhaustion from the move. It was on our second night that we heard it. A faint, scratching noise coming from the attic. Our bedroom was on the second floor, and the attic was directly above us. At first, I dismissed it as just maybe a squirrel or something small, but the second was persistent, and it seemed to be deliberate, almost rhythmic. "Did you hear that?" My wife, Sarah, asked, her voice a whisper in the dark. "Probably just a raccoon, babe," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'll check it out tomorrow." The next day, armed with a flashlight and a sense of determination, I pulled down the creaky attic ladder and climbed up. The attic was dusty and filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. There were boxes labeled with dates that went back decades, maybe even a century. I walked carefully. The floorboards groaned under my weight. I saw nothing unusual, no sign of any animals. But as I went to leave, the flashlight beam caught something odd. In the far corner of the attic, there was a small door, almost like a hatch. It was so low that you couldn't even crawl. Curious, I approached it. The door was old and wooden, with a rusty handle. I hesitated, feeling an inexplicable dread. Taking a deep breath, I tugged on the handle. The door opened with a creak that echoed in the silence. Behind it was a small, dark crawl space. I shone the flashlight inside and saw what looked like to be a bundle of old clothes. Just as I was about to leave, something caught my eye. Among the clothes, there was a small, intricately carved box. I reached in and pulled it out. It was surprisingly heavy for its size, and the carvings were beautiful but eerie, depicting strange, contorted faces. I brought the box downstairs, and Sarah and I examined it together. Inside, we found a collection of old photographs, a child's diary, and a tarnished locket. The photographs were black and white, showing a stern-looking family in front of what appeared to be our house. The diary belonged to a girl named Eliza, and as we read through it, a chilling story began to unfold. Eliza wrote about her family, but most notably, she wrote about her brother, Thomas. Thomas, according to the diary, had always been a very peculiar kid. As he grew older, his behavior became more erratic and disturbing. He claimed to hear voices and see things that no one else could see. The family tried to keep it a secret, fearing the stigma of mental illness, especially in those times. The entries grew darker and more frantic. Eliza wrote more strange rituals Thomas would perform in the attic, about how he would sit in the corner, talking to someone only he could see. He mentioned the small door and the crawl space, and how Thomas would disappear there for hours. The final entry was most unsettling. Eliza wrote about the night when the voices told Thomas to free them. She described waking up to the sound of what sounded like scratching and found Thomas in the attic, standing in front of the small door. He turned to her, his eyes wide in terror and ecstasy, and said, "They're coming for us." After that entry, the diary abruptly ended. As we finished reading, the temperature of the room seemed to drop. We both felt it, a cold, oppressive presence. That night, the scratching in the attic returned, louder and more insistent. It was as if something was trying to break free. Sarah and I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, set our nerves on edge. Around midnight, we heard it again. The unmistakable sound of footsteps in the attic. This time, they were heavy. This time, they were heavy, deliberate, moving with a purpose. "I can't take this anymore," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here." But we didn't have anywhere to go, at least not immediately, so we decided to confront whatever it was. We grabbed flashlights and cautiously made our way to the attic. The air was freezing, and our breaths formed visible clouds. As we climbed the ladder, the footsteps stopped. The silence was even more terrifying. We reached the attic and shone our flashlights around, the beams cutting through the darkness. Everything was as I left it, except the small door. It was open. I approached it, my heart pounding. Inside, the crawl space was empty now. The bundle of clothes in the box were gone. But there was something else. A faint, almost imperceptible whispering, like a distant conversation just beyond the range of hearing. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut behind us. We were plunged into darkness, and the only light coming from our flashlights. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, until a cacophony of voices. I felt a hand grip my arm. It was Sarah. "Let's get out of here, please," she said, her voice barely audible over the noise. We scrambled down the ladder and out of the attic, slamming the hatch shut behind us. We didn't stop until we were outside, standing in the cold air of the night. The house loomed above us, its windows dark and foreboding. The next morning, we packed up our things and left. We stayed with a friend while we looked for a new place. We never went back to that house, and we never spoke about what happened again. A few months later, I received a call from the real estate agent handling the sale of our house. He told me that there was new owners that had found something in the attic. A small, intricately carved box. It was empty. The night as I tried to sleep, I heard it again. The faint sound of scratching, coming from the walls. I know how this sounds. I know how I sound. You probably think I'm another paranoid insomniac spiraling into delusion and just has lack of sleep. I wouldn't blame you. A few weeks ago, I would have said the same thing about someone like me. But that was a few weeks ago. There's a man who stands across the street from my house every single night, exactly at 2:17 a.m. He doesn't speak. He doesn't move. He just stands there, watching. At first, I thought he was just some drunk wandering home too late, or a tweaker looking for unlocked cars. My neighborhood's not bad, but it's not exactly crime-free either. It was easy to dismiss this first night when I saw him. I glanced out of my front window while grabbing water from the kitchen, saw a figure under the street lamp, and figured he'd be gone by morning. And he was. When I woke up later that morning, he was gone. But the next night, at the same time, 2:17 a.m., he was there again. Same spot, same stiff posture, same unnatural stillness. I stared at him for a long time, waiting for some type of movement. Shift his weight, scratch his face, light a cigarette. Something. Nothing. I turned away to grab my phone and snap a picture, but when I looked back, he was gone. It was weird, yeah, but I still didn't panic. I figured I'd just missed him walking off. But then it happened again, and again, and again. For 7 nights straight, I woke up always at 2:17 a.m., like my body just knew to see him just standing there under that flickering street lamp, perfectly still, watching my house. Not watching the street, not just loitering, watching me. I decided to take a video. I left my phone recording by the window, angled perfectly to capture him on the sidewalk. I figured if I could show someone, anyone, they'd obviously believe me. I didn't wake up that night. I watched the footage the next morning. Nothing. No figure, no movement, just an empty street and that old half-burnt-out streetlight buzzing like always. I thought maybe I'd angled the camera wrong, so I tried again the next night. This time, I stayed up watching from behind the curtain and hit record as soon as he appeared. I watched the footage again. Still, nothing. The man I saw with my own fucking eyes didn't show up on the camera. That's when I started asking friends over. If I couldn't catch him on camera, then someone else standing next to me right here in the room. They'd have to see him too. My buddy Greg came over for a late night beer. I kept it casual, waited till 2:17 a.m. The man appeared. Without taking my eyes off of him, I told Greg to look out of the window. He came over and stood next to me. I asked if he could see the man standing there across the street. He squinted and said no. I asked if he was sure, keeping my eyes on that man standing right there under that street lamp. Then Greg asked me if I see a man standing there. And he said that in that way that lets you know that somebody thinks that you're going nuts. I could have screamed. The guy was standing right there. I described him in detail. Tall, lean, wearing a long dark coat, hands at his sides, head tilted just slightly upward, like he was staring at the second floor. My bedroom. Greg laughed it off, but I couldn't tell if I'd freaked him out or what. He didn't finish his beer. Haven't heard from him since, so I guess I got my answer. Over the next few nights, I tried again with different people, neighbors, co-workers, even my cousin. Same result every time. I could see him. No one else could. I even brought binoculars one night. I don't know why I thought that would help. I guess I wanted to see his face, confirm that he was real. But what I saw wasn't a face. It was... I don't know how to describe it. The proportions were all wrong. It was too long, like it had been stretched vertically. The skin was grayish blue and smooth like wax. And his eyes. No, not his eyes, just the pits sunken into his head. As soon as I looked too long, he turned his head slowly and looked directly at me. I dropped the binoculars, backed away from the window. I don't even remember going back to bed that night. That's when I called the police. They humored me. They checked the street, drove around, took my statement. I showed them the footage of nothing. Told them about the time, the pattern, everything. One officer just asked me if I was under stress. Another stated suggesting mental health resources. I tried not to lose it in front of them. They said there are all kinds of people out that late, that it was probably just some drunk or somebody trying to get drugs or on drugs. They left me with, "We'll keep an eye out." That line, and I knew they wouldn't be back. The next night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and waited. 2:17 a.m. hit, and the man wasn't under the streetlight. I looked down at my watch. Still 2:17. I looked back out, and he wasn't there, under that streetlight. No, he was closer. He stood at the edge of my lawn, halfway between the sidewalk and the street. Still staring, still silent, still utterly still. That was the first night I didn't look away. I sat at the window and stared back for an hour. 2. I don't even remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, it was morning and he was gone. I checked the lawn. No footprints. Then, 2 nights later, he was there again. Closer, just outside of the window, right beneath it. Not moving. Not even blinking. That's when I started locking everything. Doors, windows, vents. I sealed my bedroom window with fucking duct tape. I bought security systems. Set up cameras around my house. Got a baseball bat and a big-ass kitchen knife and kept them both beside my bed. That was the first night I heard footsteps in the hallway. I live alone. That thought hit me like ice in my spine. I sat up in bed, clutching that knife in one hand and the bat in the other, heart pounding in my ears. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, not heavy, not shuffling. Just soft, steady, confident. They moved past my bedroom door and into the kitchen. Then, silence. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't get up and check to see who was there or what it was. I didn't even move. I just sat in bed, froze, waiting, listening, and hoping. When the sun rose, I forced myself to search the house. Every window was locked, every door still sealed. Window still had duct tape from the inside. No sign of a break-in, but the kitchen floor had a set of muddy footprints. Bare feet. Large. Too large. That night, I didn't set up the cameras. I didn't check the windows. I just sat in bed, holding a knife, with white knuckles, too afraid to blink. And yet somehow, I must have fallen asleep, because I woke up at 2:16 a.m., and my room was ice cold. The man was standing at the foot of my bed. No glass between us. No window. No street lamp. Inside. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I just watched him. Tall and still. Pale and eyeless. Towering over me in the dark. Then, he lunged. A flash of motion, faster than anything that size should have been able to move. His hand came down, and a jagged, filthy fingernail ripped through my arm from shoulder to elbow. I screamed. Finally, I screamed. And he asked. Not a breathly sound. It was low and gurgling, like wet leaves rustling inside a throat. He slashed again, this time across my face, just beneath my right eye. I felt the heat of blood pour down my cheek. And then, just like that, he was gone. I sat there panting, bleeding, shaking like a leaf in a storm. The knife was still in my hand, unused. The clock on my nightstand read 2:18 a.m. I cleaned up the wounds. I figured I'd probably need stitches in my arm, probably my face too, but that could wait. Instead, I went back to the police. I showed them my arm and my face. The cuts were deep, angry and real. The officer barely looked at them before narrowing his face and asked if I did it myself. What? No! Fuck you! I said to him. I told him the guy was in my fucking room. But the cop just cut me off, calling me sir, like he actually had the respect for me before proceeding to grill me with questions about whether I'm taking any type of medications or had any type of thoughts about harming myself or killing myself. That's when I knew I was fucked. They thought I was losing it. I could see it in their faces. One officer radioed something in, probably trying to get me put on some psych hold. I could feel the room closing in. I don't know how, but somehow I managed to talk my way out of it. I made up some excuse, laughed it off, and just said it was a cat scratch, and I'd just had a rough week. I told them I appreciated their concern and promised I'd see a therapist. They let me go, but not before one of them leaned in and told me that next time they saw me like that, I'd be sticking around for a lot longer. That was 3 nights ago. He hasn't come back. Not under the street lamp. Not on my lawn. Not inside. But that doesn't mean he's gone. I sit by the window every night now. I don't sleep. I don't eat much. I just watch. The street light flickers like always. The camera's long since been turned off. There's no point anymore. Every night at 2:17 a.m., I stare out into that dark and I wait. Sometimes I think I see a shadow flicker in the corner of my eye. Sometimes I feel breath on my neck and turn around to find nothing. Sometimes I just wake up with that burning sensation in my arm, as if the wound has been touched. Whatever he is, I don't think he's human. I don't think he's bound by doors or windows or even time. He could be waiting. He could be inside me. He could be somewhere just beyond the veil, watching. I don't know when he'll show up again, but I know he's not done with me. And next time, I'm not sure I'll survive. I still get chills whenever I think about that house. Honestly, part of me just wonders if sharing this will help me finally sleep better, or maybe it'll make it worse. Either way, I need to get this off my chest. Growing up, my brother and I had this weird fascination with old houses. You know, the ones with the peeling wallpaper, the dusty rooms, and the stale smell that hits you the moment that you walk in. We used to sneak into abandoned houses in the old part of the town just to see what was left behind, and I swear those afternoons shaped the rest of our lives. We ended up going all in on this obsession, forming our own little paranormal investigation team, convinced that ghosts weren't just TV gimmicks. I remember that night, the call that changed everything, just like it happened yesterday. It was the beginning of October and cold already, the kind where the wind literally howls outside like a scene straight out of a horror movie. We were at the dining room table with our usual setup, our laptops, case files, leftover pizza. That's when the phone rang. On the other end, there was a woman who sounded terrified. She kept talking about strange noises and moving objects in her house on the edge of town. My heart started pounding because something about her voice just, I don't know, it felt real. More real than anything we'd ever dealt with before. Now, her old Victorian house wasn't exactly a secret. Locals talked about it. Supposedly, it has been haunted with all sorts of creepy legends. If you ever drove by it, you couldn't miss it. The sagging porch or the shutters rattling in the wind. We loaded up our gear into the van and headed over, half excited, half terrified. It was already dark by the time we got there. The place gave me that feeling, the feeling like the air was heavier, like we were walking into something that we just couldn't walk out of. My brother parked the van and rattled off what the homeowner, Evelyn, had told him about over the phone. Objects moving, cold spots, whispers. The usual, he said, trying to sound unimpressed, but I could see a flicker of excitement in his eyes. I tried to keep my own voice steady as I checked my notes. She'd mentioned not sleeping for weeks. My gut twisted. I couldn't shake that sense that we were messing with something bigger than us. The wind nearly tore the sound of our knock right off the door. When I finally opened, this frail, elderly woman stood there. You could see fear on her face. Her hands trembled as she thanked us for coming, and something about her eyes just made me want to turn around and run back to the safety of the van. But we went in. Inside, the house felt off. That's the only word that I can describe it with. The smell of old books clung to everything, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. Maybe lavender, maybe something older. Dust covered the furniture like no one had ever touched it in the last couple of decades. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway was so loud in the silence, it made me jump. We set up our equipment as she told us her story. Whispers in the night, things moving on their own. The awful feeling of being watched, even when she was supposedly alone. We split up and started investigating. Temperature drops, weird shadows darting in the corners of our flashlights. It was like the house wanted to show us that it was alive, or something else entirely. In one cramped study, our recorder picked up a quiet whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But when I replayed it, it clearly said, "Leave." We asked Evelyn if anyone had died in the house, or if there had been any other horrible thing to have happened here. She insisted that she didn't know anything. My brother reassured we'd review everything, then come back with answers. She looked so relieved, but also not at the same time, like she'd been living with this forever. Afterwards, we spent a few days hunched over our dining room table, analyzing every piece of footage. We had temperature readings plummeting for no reason, EMF spikes, faint whispers we couldn't explain. But here's the weird part. Every time Evelyn was supposed to be on camera, like if she was pointing at something moving, she just wasn't in the footage. My brother and I tried to brush it off as some weird camera angle, but I knew it was wrong. It made no sense. So, naturally, of course, we ended up going back. When we pulled up, the old house looked totally different. Fresh paint, no sagging porch, or broken shutters. We thought it was the wrong house, but the address was the same. I didn't want to, but my brother wanted to see it through. When we knocked, a young woman answered, looking at us like we were trying to sell something. I asked for Evelyn, and that's when my entire world flipped upside down. She told us Evelyn had died decades ago. She was her great aunt, the same woman we'd literally just spoken to a week earlier. My brother and I must have looked like we were going insane. We tried to argue and said that we'd just been there, but the new homeowner's expression shifted from annoyance to something sad, like she knew more than she was telling us. We left rattled. Back home, we double-checked the property's records, anything we could find. There it was, plain black and white, an obituary for Evelyn from years ago. I swear my heart stopped for a second. Then, I found an old photograph of the house in its prime. There she was, right in the middle of the picture, along with everyone else, including the staff. The caption below listing the names of the people in the picture confirmed that it was her. Later, I found another clipping. Her death wasn't natural. They didn't spell it out, but it was definitely tragic. We pored over our footage again, searching for answers. The more we looked, the more apparent it became. Evelyn wasn't visible on any video. Not a shadow, not a silhouette, nothing. Anytime we thought we'd caught a glimpse, the frame would just distort, like she was there but also not there. We found that same whisper again. Leave, repeating over and over. Anyway, that's my story. Maybe I'm hoping someone will read this and might have an explanation that'll finally make it a little bit easier to sleep at night. All I know is that if you ever find yourself drawn to an old house and the ghosts of the past, be careful what you wish for. Because sometimes the past is all too eager to talk back. Back in 2015, the company that I worked for expanded to a new office in Rochester. I stayed there for about a week to overview their recruiting process and to sign off on a couple of larger purchases. It was all the standard procedure. I'd done this before and at an affiliate branch, but it was my first time doing it on my own. It was a lot of responsibility. I got to a room at a small hotel called the Silver Sands Hotel. I think the place closed in like 2021. I can't see it online anymore. It was just down the road from the Silver Lake, hence the name. It didn't have a lot of visitors, so the rooms were pretty cheap and surprisingly fresh. While my work is interesting in itself, what I'm here to tell you about is something that happened at the hotel. I'm a practical kind of man, so I'm not much for ghost stories or make-believe, but there's also no way for me to really ignore something I experienced with my own eyes and ears. After my first day at the new office, I was exhausted. All I'd had to eat all day was salami and brie cheese from a cheap deli, and my stomach was doing flips. I was having a smoke outside the hotel before settling in for the night, talking to my wife on the phone. I always do this thing when I'm having a long phone conversation where I pace back and forth. I was barely paying attention when I wandered across the small field of tall grass back on the back road. In that field, I spotted something blue. I got a closer look and found a handful of blue sunflowers. I thought they were just dry and dead at first, but it was just the color. I picked one to take home to my wife. Blue is her favorite color. I think she could hear something sneaky in my voice. I remember her commenting on it. I went back to my room. There was a Bible on the nightstand, so I opened it to a random passage and put the sunflower in it. Then I put the lamp on top of it for pressure, a simple press and dry. I didn't think much until the next morning when I woke up and there were a couple of little black bugs crawling across the nightstand. Just a few, maybe like 3 or 4. I crushed them with my thumb, washed my hands, and figured that was that. Then I went to the office. After a long day of work, that little detail completely slipped my mind. I figured they were just something brought in with the flower, and that they'd be either dead or gone before long. My mind was full of Excel, spreadsheets, email, responses, and company policies. I didn't have time to think about little things crawling around in my hotel room. But by the time I got back, I couldn't ignore them anymore. I didn't notice them at first, but the moment that I sat down on my bed and turned on my lamp, they were impossible to ignore. They'd spread from just a couple to a couple of dozen, and they weren't just crawling around on my nightstand, but in my bed. They were crawling all over the Bible and the dry pressed sunflower, so I just threw the thing away. I tried wiping away the bugs, but there were too many, and a couple of them had gotten into my clothes as well. They didn't bite or anything, but I could feel them just tickling me. It was so faint that even after I'd wiped them all off, I could still imagine myself feeling them. It was late, but I was disgusted. I went downstairs to talk to the receptionist about my room having some kind of bed bug, and they took it pretty seriously. They gave me a new room immediately, and they told me that they'd be investigating it for me. But despite a shower and a change of clothes and a completely new room, I could still feel those things tickling my skin. I imagined seeing them, only for it to turn out to be just specks of dust and grains of sand. They were gone, but they didn't feel gone. The next day, as I left for work, the receptionist called me over. I was a bit stressed, and I think that she picked up on that, so she cut straight to the point. Sir, we haven't found any type of bed bugs in your room," she explained. "You should be okay. I'm sorry if you were inconvenienced." "You sure there weren't any bed bugs?" I asked. "Did you check the nightstand?" "Yeah, we checked all over. We take this sort of thing pretty seriously." "Well, I'm sure what I saw," I said. "There were bugs there." "I don't know what to tell you, sir. There's nothing there." That distracted me a bit. I couldn't stop wondering what they'd been and how they could have even gone without a trace. It had just been a day. There ought to be a couple around still, but it didn't stop there. A couple of times that day, I got this sudden shiver, like something crawling across my bones, sending shards of ice through my nerves. I'd be in a meeting with one of the local suppliers, and I'd just completely lose my train of thought and in mid-sentence, like I had a mind sneeze or something. It looked strange, and I didn't make a very good impression. I checked myself in the bathroom 3 times. At one point, I even took off all my clothes in the bathroom and just stood in the stall and shook them piece by piece to see if maybe anything would fall out. When I got to my socks, a small black dot fell out, but I just couldn't tell. Was it a dead bug or a grain of sand or just a speck of dust? After all that effort, I was left none the wiser, and it gnawed in the back of my mind. Coming back to the hotel, I felt paranoid. I checked my room up and down, but I couldn't find anything. I showered for about an hour, scrubbing myself all over with 2 different kinds of soap. I checked my hair, my beard, my ears, and with every little speck of black that fell out, I felt my heart sink. I couldn't tell what was what anymore, and my senses were screaming at me that everything I felt was these ticklish little things. I could barely sleep. I kept waking up to these weird noises as if something was poking around in my ear. I had these awful nightmares, and it was hard to figure out where the nightmare ended and my bed started. I'd dream I was covered in those things, and when I'd wake up, I'd still feel them on my skin. I'd get up with my heart pounding out of my chest, checking the bed over and over. All in all, I got about 2 hours of sleep. I was a complete mess the next day, but I had to review my final vision of our contract, and it was going to be hell. In the morning when I put my clothes on, I noticed a couple of bugs. This time, there was no doubt. They moved. There was a dozen or so of them, crawling all over my bag. I was already late for work, so I didn't have time to get a new room. I stopped briefly at the reception. I explained that I had found a couple more bugs, and I'd appreciate if they could check it out, and if they found something, that they would just move my items into another room. The receptionist rolled her eyes and kept smiling with her face. She clearly thought that I was having some kind of hypochondriac moment, or that I was just messing with her, but she was a professional. She smiled, agreed, and wished me a good day. I've got to emphasize, I don't have a problem with creepy crawlies. I ate earthworms as a dare when I was a kid. I would catch bumblebees in my bare hands. I never really cared about that stuff, but something about these things really bothered me. It's as if they were just intrusive. They made me doubt they were even real. That day went by as a bit of a blur. I have vague memories of falling asleep in the meeting and having a long discussion about something that I forgot the topic of halfway through. I kept getting these random tics where it felt like a nerve had been pinched. I tried to remind myself that it was most likely just my imagination, but then again, I couldn't tell for sure. By the time that I got back to the hotel, I ran up to the receptionist. The receptionist that I'd previously talked to had finished her shift, but the man who had taken her place had clearly been told about me. He was ready. I didn't even ask him before I got an answer. "Sir, there were no bed bugs in your room," he said. "You're completely fine, and yes, we've checked and double-checked." "I'm sorry," I sighed, stressed. You know, I'm sure I saw something, but... "Sir, I understand, and it's fine. If there really were bed bugs, that'd be something we take very seriously. I don't know what they are, but I saw a bunch of them crawling across the room. Really small things like ground pepper." He raised an eyebrow and gave me a courteous nod. Discussion over. That night I was exhausted. I just lay in bed letting whatever crawl around do it. I didn't care. I could feel them in my hair and on my skin, but they couldn't be real. They'd already checked and there were no insects in there, and yet I found myself looking at a dozen or so of them, crawling around on the floor. As I dozed in and out of an uneasy sleep, I heard a strange scratching sound, like something dragging a brush across a carpet. Looking over at the edge of the bed, the insects on the floor were gone, or had they really even been there to begin with? I kept hearing this strange noise although through the night. I finally fell asleep with my arm hanging over the side of the bed. I could feel a couple of bugs gathering on my fingers. Then, there was something cold, like a wet dog nose. Something touched my finger. I peeked down from my bed a final time as the first rays of the morning sun poked through the hotel curtains, and something pulled back, fast, retreating under the bed. I pulled my arm up and rolled over, hoping it was just my imagination. I couldn't fathom the idea of something hiding under my bed. In the morning, I couldn't tell if I had been dreaming or not. The bugs on the floor were gone. I looked under the bed, and all I could find was a small little vent just big enough for somebody to fit their head in. But it was my final day, and I was checking out. I checked my bag and my clothes a final time, and it looked fine. Nothing creepy nor crawly. I checked out of my room and headed to the receptionist to give him the key. No issues tonight?" she asked. Some, I said. Not more than usual. I'm sorry, she huffed. But I don't understand. Did you really see something up there? Sometimes, I admitted. It's like little black things. I can't explain it. We had Jordan up there all day and he couldn't find a single bug. He vacuumed the place too, even 3 times. I don't know what to tell you, I said. It's frustrating. Sir, I don't want to come off as accusatory, but may I offer some advice? Shoot. She gave me a look. A very, very long look. My eyes felt heavier and heavier the more I kept eye contact with her. I was more tired than I first thought I was, it seemed. Maybe it's not the room, sir, she said. Maybe it's you, or something you brought in. I made it through the day without all that much trouble. We had a couple of meetings, rounded off in a few difficult conversations, and double-checked the issues we'd tackled over the week. Despite it all, I was done, and I could go home. Work over. It was already getting dark when I got into my car. If I left immediately, I'd be home by midnight. I could probably have stayed another night, but at that point I just wanted to go home. I needed something familiar to reset. Usually when I feel like this, I've got a few screws loose. My wife is the one that usually tries to keep me grounded, and I really, really miss her. It was all such a relief. I was associating the hotel with that itchy feeling, or having something crawling on my skin and getting as far away from it as possible really would help. It wouldn't matter if it was real or not, if I was far, far away. So, I drove off, adding some distance between me and that town of Rochester. But another 30 minutes or so down the road, I felt it. That itch, that tickle. I stopped at the rest stop area, turned off my car, and closed my eyes. I took a few deep breaths. I tried to convince myself that I wasn't really feeling it. It couldn't be there. It wasn't. It was really dark outside. I could hear cars and trucks passing by from the nearby road. There was no one else around, or at least, so I thought. Looking back at it, there had been signs. The scratching noises at night, the air vents under my bed, and why was I the only one to see those bugs? It's as if they appeared and disappeared, seemingly at random. I opened my eyes, hoping something had changed, and though I didn't know it, it had. I just hadn't seen it. I turned my car keys, but nothing happened. I tried again. Not a sound. Nothing. I got out to check the engine, but I couldn't make sense of it. I'm not much of a car guy, but I could tell a couple of cables had either been cut or pulled out. It wasn't a clean cut, though. It looked like they had been gnawed on. Getting back in my car, I pulled out my phone to call for assistance when I noticed something. Little black spots on my hand. They were really there. I could feel them. Then, a click. My glove box slowly opened by itself. Something pure white, glistening wet, emerged like an elongated slug. I couldn't move. It's as if I couldn't fully comprehend it. There was barely any light, just vague reflections coming through the passing cars in a rhythmic pulse-like manner, like a slow strobe light. And with every new pulse of light, the thing was a little closer. I couldn't tell if it was trying to sneak up on me or if it was really naturally slow. It touched my arm. It was a familiar sensation. This is what I'd felt that night when I let my arm hang off at the side of the bed. It twitched a little and gave my arm a big lick. The thing burned like acid, and it had suddenly hit me that this was, in fact, real. My heart shot out of my chest as I stumbled my way out of the car, falling backwards out of the driver's seat. I kicked the door closed just as that white thing, writhing mess, threw itself at the window. It looked gelatinous. It pressed itself against the corner of the window and slowly forced its way through. Only then did I realize I'd left my phone in the car. I must have dropped it in the moment when that thing touched me. I crawled backwards to get some distance, but by the time I had gotten up to run, that thing had made its way out of the car. It was surprisingly big, tall enough to reach my midriff if it were to stretch. I can't properly explain what this thing really looked like. It was more of like an octopus than a slug, but it had the texture of a soft chitin. It had a body-like mass, which resembled a cluster of lotus pods. A few pods produced these long appendages, which seemed to stretch several times its height. It's so hard to say what was up or down or the head or anything. I couldn't see any eyes or ears, but it seemed to know exactly where I was. So when I turned to run, it was right behind me. It was faster than I had anticipated. It threw out its arms and pulled itself forward, quickly gaining momentum until it could wrap itself around my leg. It did so with force of a foxtrot. I made it to the tree line before it got me. There was a nearby picnic table, and I had managed to grab the foot of it. I tried to pull myself forward, but that thing, it was heavy. It was like trying to drag a plastic bag full of marmalade. I fought it tooth and goddamn nail. I punched, kicked, slapped, and pulled at it, but it just kept climbing. Those appendages wrapped around my arms, burning me with like acetone. It got to my neck, and I could hear something coming from it, like an inflating and deflating balloon, combined with the purr of a cat. Then, it retracted a membrane, revealing a stinger. It stuck me in the shoulder. I was full on panicking at this point, screaming for help at the top of my lungs, but I just couldn't make a lot of noise. This thing was heavy, and I was barely breathing. I was taking breaths that were so shallow that I could feel my vision getting blurry. It wrapped something around my arm and pressed. It pressed so hard that I thought something would snap. The more I pulled, the harder it grabbed, locking me to the ground. But it wasn't killing me. It wasn't drinking my blood. I looked closer. There were little black bugs pouring out of the sting in my shoulder. This blob thing was licking them up. These things had literally been inside me, and it was eating them. It explained so much. The bugs had been using me to sort of a carrier, and the moment I left the room, they disappeared. That's why I was the only one seeing them. They followed me, and this thing had been following me in turn, trying to catch a stray meal. This thing was like an anteater, and I was the anthill. I tried to stay still. It dragged its appendages across my hair, effectively cleaning me like a wounded kitten, and this thing was the mother cat. I got 3 more stings, one in my shoulder blade, one on the left tricep, and one in my right calf, and with every wound, it pressed those things out of me. Then it was done. It rolled off and dragged itself into the woods. After a minute or so, I couldn't hear it anymore. I got up, and my whole body felt numb. That this thing must have had some kind of anesthetic effect, because I couldn't feel my skin around the puncture wounds. I had these dark blue fist-sized bruises over my body where that thing had squeezed me. But at that moment, I was just happy to be alive. Getting back to my car, I realized something. That thing must have been more intelligent than I gave it credit for. It had understood that stopping my car would give it time and space that it needed to attack. It also knew how to stop my car. It had taken several careful steps not to be caught or seen before it revealed itself. And that first contact, it had slowly reached out to me as if it was seeing if I was hostile. I picked up my phone and called for a tow. After all that, it seemed like I was staying in Minnesota for another night. Now that I look back on it years later, I still don't know what to make of it. I think I got in touch with something I shouldn't, that this thing was cleaning up the mess. Something hid inside of that damn flower, and this blob was feeding on it. I've never heard or seen anything like it before or since, but I can't deny that it happened. It was tough to explain to my wife. I finally went with, I messed with a wasp nest. It was easier of trying to explain what I had experienced over those days. It sounded insane just even talking about it in my own head. I believe there are ecosystems that live right under our noses. I think there's more to it than we really can anticipate, and some of these things come from places we can only imagine or begin to even understand. If these kind of things can exist up here on the surface with us, what else is out there in the places where we can't look? It makes me think of all those dark and unchecked corners of that room, the world really. If you lift the wrong rock at the wrong time, what might spring out? I never should have bought that laptop. It turned my life completely upside down. It all started on a late-night browsing spree, the kind that often led down different rabbit holes of these obscure websites from the dark web, offering all kinds of tantalizing offers. You could find anything imaginable there, from legal to the illegal and everything in between. That's when I found it. A listing that seemed innocent enough, buried among a jumble of more questionable items. Old laptop, perfect for refurbishing, minimal wear and tear, in great working condition. The ad read, "I'm a tech enthusiast who is always looking for new projects, and this one was too good to pass up. The only reservation I had was the seller's lack of reviews, and those that existed were very vague, making it hard to tell if the product was legit. But the price was unbeatable, and I figured it was probably worth the risk." As I clicked buy now, a sense of unease immediately settled in my stomach, but I brushed it off. I needed a distraction, and the laptop seemed like the perfect little project. When the laptop finally arrived, it looked a little worn, but had a certain retro charm to it. I wiped it down, plugged it in, and powered it up. The screen flickered to life, revealing a handful of files. Most were harmless old documents, music files, and applications. But one stood out. "Do not open," it read in bold, red lettering. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. Curiosity just gnawed at me. It had to be a joke left by the previous owner. I was a seasoned hacker. I could, of course, just handle a simple file. Taking a deep breath, I clicked on it. Immediately, the screen filled with static. The sound was sharp, cutting through the silence and sending a chill down my spine. I wanted to close the laptop, but I continued watching mesmerized. The video appeared, grainy and dark. A strange-looking figure stood before the flickering candle, chanting in a language I could not understand. His voice was low and haunting. Suddenly, he turned to the camera, revealing his hollow eyes that seemed to just stare straight through me. The video then abruptly cuts off, leaving only the eerie silence. I closed the laptop, a little taken aback, but not totally shaken. "It's just a video," I whispered to myself. Nothing more. But I had no idea that the real disturbances were only about to begin in my life. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications. My social media accounts were filled with strange messages, and people I hadn't talked to in years were frantically emailing me, calling me, and texting me. I was overwhelmed, trying to just make sense of it all. Then, an old school friend called, his voice sounding shaky. He asked if I was okay, saying he'd received an email with a video of me trying to hang myself. I froze in shock. "I'm sending it now," he said. The email arrived and my heart raced as I clicked on that video. It was a grainy recording of me in my living room standing beneath a noose. I watched in horror as I positioned myself to go through with it. I have no memory of this. I had never done anything like this. How could this even happen? Just then, the doorbell rang, followed by a loud banging. My stomach churned. Was it the police? Had someone reported the video? How am I going to explain any of this to them? Hesitant, I opened the door, bracing myself for a tough conversation with the police. But instead of the authorities, it was my girlfriend Stella. Her mascara was smeared all over her face from crying, but her expression was nothing but pure fury. Without a word, she stormed in, shoving me back onto the couch. Before I could even react, she kicked her shoes off and started hitting me with it. Hard, relentless blows as I tried to shield myself. "Stella, wait! I can explain!" I pleaded. "The video was fake. I wasn't trying to do anything." She paused, her chest heavying with anger, then pulled out her phone. "Explain this then!" She spat, thrusting the screen in front of my face. There was another video this time. Me sitting on the beach with a woman who clearly wasn't Stella. The two of us were laughing and flirting while she sat on my lap. Tears streamed down Stella's face. "Are you saying this is fake too?" she asked with her voice cracking. I stared at the screen dumbfounded. I didn't recognize the woman in the video, nor have I ever even been to that beach as well. None of it made sense, but before I could even form a response, Stella threw her shoe at me one last time, and then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I was left sitting there, reeling from the sheer impossibility of it all. Then, my phone rang again. This time it was my parents. They said they'd received a news clip showing me in jail after a drunk driving accident. A news clip? Of me in jail? How could that even be possible? As I stood up in my own living room, completely bewildered, I asked myself that question. My head spun as I spent the next few hours trying to calm my friends and family down, assuring to them that I was fine and that it was just some sick prank. But was it really a prank? I reluctantly glanced at the laptop as a wave of dread washed over me. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly approached it and opened it again. The screen flickered to life. This time all the files were gone except for two, the original Do Not Open file, and a new one, labeled Victims. My hands trembled as I clicked on Victims. A list appeared that was long and chilling. I scrolled down, each entry accompanied by photos and usernames from the dark web, people who were probably no longer alive. My blood ran cold when I saw my name. I was number 178, the most recent victim. My status was being showed as in progress. As I clicked on my folder, a photo of me appeared, along with details only someone who had been watching me would know. Some of the other usernames on this list were familiar too, people I'd seen online on the dark web and forums I frequent. I often wondered where they suddenly vanished to. Now I knew why, and I realized I might be next. Panic surged through me. I slammed the laptop shut, grabbed it, and raced out the door. I drove for a few hours until I found a secluded spot near a dumpster. I tossed the laptop out and drove over it several times to make sure that it was destroyed. For the first time in days, I felt some relief. But it didn't last long. When I returned home, my blood froze. The laptop was sitting on my desk, as if I had never left. A chill crept down my spine as I stood there, staring in horror. Paranoia consumed me. Right then I knew I had a huge problem on my hands and had to find a solution, no matter what. So I started looking online on these forums dedicated to paranormal activities and digital hauntings. Maybe, just maybe, someone else has encountered something with this, or some similar experience. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing furiously, desperate for answers. As I scrolled through hundreds of posts, I found one that caught my eye. It was headlined, "The Cursed Laptop." The poster detailed a story eerily similar to mine. After purchasing an old laptop from the dark web, he began receiving anonymous messages and videos that terrorized the user. His advice was simple but chilling. Confront it, do a cleansing ritual. So, I researched further on the dark web, uncovering an array of rituals involving salt, candles, and incantations. I gathered the supplies, feeling both foolish and desperate at the same time. As night fell, I prepared the ritual in my dimly lit apartment, following all the instructions to the letter. I lit a row of candles on each side of the room and drew a circle in the middle of the floor using salt. Once I stood inside the circle, I started the incantation. "Spirits of the digital realm, I call upon you to reveal yourself," I said, my voice slightly trembling. "I seek to end this torment." Nothing happened at first, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But then the laptop flickered violently. The screen flashed and the ominous file appeared, more vivid than before. The strange figure was looking at me intently through the laptop, as if he was trying to get to measure of me. Suddenly the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. Even the light from the candles was being blocked from illuminating the room by some unseen powerful force. And then slowly, the candles started to spread a little bit of the light around the room, casting a creepy-looking silhouette by my side. Right then, I felt a cold and putrid breath against my neck, and a voice whisper in my ear.
"You've invited me in, Anthony."
I could feel his presence just behind the salt circle, and I realized he couldn't get closer. This was the same figure that appeared on the video, first when I opened the laptop, but in real he looked a lot more terrifying. He carefully stood at the edge of my vision, his dark silhouette blurring in the boundaries of reality. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure stepped closer, his face a distorted visage of rage.
"You opened the door, and now you must pay the price."
Terror clawed at my insides, but I forced myself to stand my ground. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to refurbish the laptop."
"It's too late for remorse,"
he hissed, a chilling echo of my own fear. In that moment, I remembered the ritual. I needed to confront this entity to assert my will. "I reject you. I will not be your victim. Spirits from the digital realm, I command you to leave," I shouted at the top of my lungs. The temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows lengthened. I felt a tug of war between my will and the spirit's malevolent force, as everything started to swirl around me. The figure roared in anger, while the screen flickered wildly as it struggled against my command. Suddenly, my room was plunged into complete darkness, and the power was returned a few seconds later. When my gaze shifted toward the table, I realized that the laptop was gone. It had disappeared. Finally, out of my life for good. Thank God and the Holy Spirits. After that day, I changed all of my electronic devices. Yes, I replaced every single one of them. I even deleted my email and the other online accounts, and opened completely new ones. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. In fact, it had been over 3 months since I had visited the dark web, and I don't plan on visiting anytime soon. Then I also did manage to get back with my girlfriend Stella. Somehow I was able to convince her of my innocence. So, one day while we were on vacation and having a good time, a message suddenly appeared on my phone, attached with a single folder. My hands trembled as I stared at that screen, heart pounding. The folder's name flashed at me in a bold red lettering. Do not open. Hey everyone. So, as you see from the thumbnail and the different styled video this time, I'm trying out a new style. I want to see how it really goes and if you guys are enjoying it. More goes into it, I know, but let's just see how it works. Make sure to let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed that or if you enjoy this new style that we're trying out. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and this is the first one that you've heard, if the algorithm has possibly picked it up. Thanks for watching, and if you would like to see more, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to turn on those post notifications so when I post a video, you'll get notified. Since it seems like, which, once again, let me know in the comments if the notifications are starting to work a lot better. Don't know what was going on with that, but it is what it is. Make sure to check out the links in the description as well, like Twitter, Instagram, everything like that, yada yada, you know the usual spiel that I always give. Make sure to also, if you guys have any stories, make sure to submit those to my Gmail. What other than that, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.